personal attorney. You know what happened almost 250 years ago? It's been about that long, 250 years since December 25th of 1776. You know what the Americans did? I mean, if you wonder sometimes about you know, uh, Christmas and all the rest of it, one of the most famous Christmases was when Washington crossed the Delaware. Um, the Hessian troops, the British mercenaries, I guess they were German, hired by the British, and they had their party and all the rest of it, and they were kind of drunk and asleep. That's the story. And of course, the Continental Army, led by George Washington, crossed the Delaware on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and attacked the Hessians and slaughtered them, and there you go. So, what kind of people are Americans? We're the kind of people who will cross the Delaware River, full of ice and terribleness, and take care of you in your sleep. That's where we come from. All right. In other words, when something's worth doing, it's worth doing right, and don't let the facts get in. Don't let the qualms get in the way. Or the ice and snow and all the rest of that stuff. But that's what they did. There were supposed to be. I don't know if you realize this. There were supposed to be three attacks. There was only one. There was only the one that Washington himself led. Um, Other things happened with there were other problems. Let's put it that way. But it was a successful attack early on in the war, December. We only declared independence in July, so just a few months later. But it's one of those things. If you go to I was the Smithsonian history, they don't include the date. I was I was kind of interested by that. It's like they don't want to. It's like, oh, that would be kind of harsh, crossing fighting on Christmas Day, but sure enough, the point is that if it's worth doing whenever you got to get it done. And as I was saying before, we've instituted this new way of getting stuff done. And Christmas time, between Christmas and Thanksgiving, I'll tell you, it used to be the the thought used to be there's not much point in having a workshop after Halloween because everybody's all focused on the holidays. Right? Nobody cares about this stuff, and all going to be preoccupied with other things. Since then, though, and this is, gosh, probably I'd have to say it's a 20-year trend. It's funny when you've been at it as long as I have, which is now 34 years. That's a long time, right? Is it 34? Yeah, something like that. That's a long time. And I always tend to think of things having happened over the last 5 years. But then when you look at it seriously, you have to realize it's a it's a hell of a lot longer than that. Um, it's really more of a 20-year trend where families really are at the holidays. It's not a bad thing to bring up. Actually works out being pretty positive. So, and that's Washington crossed the Delaware. Why? Because on Christmas Day, that's where the bad guys were, and he's going after the bad guys. He got the job done. The fact is that this is not a bad time. It always disturbs me when I see all these articles about how when families get together, oh, it's so traumatic, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas. Oh, the trauma, the trauma. And I'm not saying there isn't, you know, you don't like everybody. I do pretty much, but I can understand that, but it's like who who else shares as much history? I understand everyone has different history, right? Each one of us experienced things the way we did. But let's face it, your family members are closer to you than anybody else, right? And if you can't stand them, well, what does that say about you, right? I mean, what is it that annoys you about your family members? It's probably, the same thing like the Hessians annoyed George Washington. He's like, I'm gonna go take care of this business. Very good for him, right? Why don't you take care of business, right? Now, obviously, a little bit different than Washington and the Hessians. Got it. Still in all, at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, at this time, we see more and more people planning. Instead of being sort of the oh, we don't think about that stuff because it's Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's like we do more thinking about it because it's Thanksgiving and Christmas. Because, right, it's pretty rest of the year, maybe it's easy to ignore your family. Pretty hard to ignore them during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Pretty hard to ignore those issues. And so it's at this time that's really a very good time to, stir them up, do the hard thing, cross that Delaware,